friends, loved ones, seekers of a more curious world. Welcome. It's a profound honor to stand before you today in this historic space. I stand here as a fellow Unitarian Universalist and as the new executive director of the Unitarian Universalist Advocacy Network of Illinois, or UUANI. As I look out at this community nestled along the banks of the Fox River, I'm reminded that Geneva is a place of deep roots and constant flow. Your community that sits at a unique vantage point, where the heritage of the Fox Valley meets the forward-leaning energy of the Chicago suburbs. A people that understand that for a river to stay healthy, it must remain open, moving, and perpetually curious about what lies around the next bend. How many of us have experienced that deep, quiet pull, that internal vibration telling you when something is deeply right or profoundly, heartbreakingly wrong? We UUs have a name for that vibration. We call it conscience. That spark that ignites that conscience is grounded in curiosity. In our tradition, we don't hand you a book of answers. Instead, we hand you a compass and a question mark. Our tradition is built on the brave moral imperative to stay curious about the truth, even and especially when the truth is uncomfortable. Let's be real. The air right now is heavy. We come into the sanctuary carrying the weight of a world that feels increasingly rigid. We see the news alerts before our first cup of coffee, families seeking safety met with wire at the border, the rollback of environmental protections, the continued suspension of SNAP benefits, the rollback of the Voting Rights Act. It is a bitter irony to live in a state of such abundance while neighbors wonder where their next meal is coming from. When the news cycle is a constant drumbeat of no. No to healthcare, no to housing, no to basic dignity, our natural instinct is to close down. We stop asking why and start asking, how do I survive this? We trade our curiosity for a defensive crouch. And let's talk about the absurdity for a moment. We're living in a time where we have billionaire-funded rockets that can land themselves upright on a floating platform in the middle of the ocean, but we can't seem to figure out how to ensure a senior in King County doesn't have to choose between their property taxes and their heart medication. If we didn't have a sense of humor about the sheer ridiculousness of our current systems, we'd all be under our covers with a box of wine. And what I've heard about this congregation is that you guys like a good box of wine. When the literal and figurative infrastructure of our lives begins to show cracks, curiosity feels like a luxury we can't afford. We think curiosity is for children and for people with tenure, but I'm here to suggest that awakening curiosity is our primary spiritual work. It is the refusal to let the current state of affairs be the final answer. My path to this role is not a straight line. I spent years in corporate boardrooms at Google and Disney, mastering strategy and efficiency. I was trained to look at a mess and discern a map. In the corporate world, curiosity is branded as innovation. They tell you to think outside the box, usually while they are carefully constructing the box around you. But I've often been the only person in those rooms that looked like me. I know the exhaustion of code switching, of translating my soul into a language that power understands just to get a seat at the table. And I've learned that the most powerful tool I have isn't my MBA, it's my curiosity. I come to you as a Black woman, a single mother, and an 80s latchkey kid. I'm part of that generation that learned how to navigate systems without a manual. We were the kids who came home to empty houses, watched The Price is Right with a bowl of cereal, and figured out how to fix a broken VCR with a butter knife and sheer willpower. We didn't have the answers, so we had to be curious. We had to ask, what does this button do? And how can I make a meal out of whatever is in the pantry? That let's figure it out attitude is exactly what I bring to our advocacy. While I have great value for the work, I am tired of just resisting. Resistance is defensive. It is reacting to the world as it is. Curiosity is proactive. It asks, what if the world was different? Most pivotally, I was raised on the Navajo reservation. In that high desert landscape, I learned about the seventh generation principle, the idea that our choices today must be measured by their impact on those who will walk the earth long after we're gone. On the res, curiosity wasn't a pastime, it was a survival skill. You have to stay curious about the land, the weather, and the community to know how to thrive. If you're walking a path and you can't see a way out, eventually you just stop walking. But if you awaken your curiosity, you don't just look for a path, you start asking why the wall was built in the first place, and who has the keys to the gate. This is where you and I can come in. Geneva obviously has social justice in its bones. You are a congregation that cares deeply about the dignity of your neighbors. If your local work is the engine, UUANI can be the transmission. We shift our collective curiosity into high gear. When we go to Springfield, we aren't there just to complain. We are there to ask curious questions about the status quo that people don't want to answer. We ask why, in a state with a multi-billion-dollar budget, are we still letting property tax spikes displace seniors in the Fox Valley? What would it look like if the Illinois Economic Stability Act finally bridged the gap for families whose SNAP benefits were cut? In Kane County, we often see a tale of two cities. The beautiful historic homes of Geneva, and just a few miles away, the stark reality of housing insecurity and healthcare deserts. When SNAP benefits were slashed, it wasn't an abstract policy debate. It was an empty plate for a family in Elgin or Aurora. My experience as a mother tells me that no parent should have to perform a miracle every Tuesday to feed their kids. When one congregation speaks, it's a solo. When 34 congregations from the North Shore to right here in Geneva speak together, it's a moral chorus. We transform your individual curiosity into a spiritual infrastructure that builds a path toward a new possibility. Friends, our commitment to justice is a spiritual discipline. And I'll be blunt, we cannot afford maybe later. The forces of dehumanization are moving now. They are organized, they are funded, they are counting on our despair. Despair is the death of curiosity. Despair says, I know exactly how this ends, and it's bad. Despair is a closed door. But as someone who's lived on the margins, I can tell you, despair is a luxury. If you have skin in the game, if your healthcare, your housing, your children's future, your vote is what's being debated, you don't have time to be nihilistic. You have to stay curious. You have to wonder, where is the crack in this system? Where is the leverage? How can we get creative? Action is the necessity. Awakening curiosity means choosing to wonder about a better Illinois, especially when the evidence is thin. Not knowing what to do is not a reason to do nothing. It is a reason to ask a better question. If you don't know where to start with the person next to you. UUANI is here to give you the what and the how so that your why has a place to land. The elders on the Navajo reservation taught me that we borrow the earth from our children. I believe that's true of justice as well. Our justice work is the debt we owe to the future. Someone, somewhere, faced daunting odds against the erasure of indigenous culture, against the exploitation of the land, and they decided to be curious about a world that included us. As we move into the heat of this legislative session, I promise to bring my whole self, my strategy, my Navajo-raised persistence, my corporate-honed efficiency, and my latchkey kid grit. But I can't do it alone. My call to you is to bring your whole selves as well. Bring your anger at the news. Use it as fuel. Bring your hope for the future. Use it as a compass to point the way. Bring your curiosity. help us as a key to find what we're not thinking about. And bring your humor, because if we can't laugh at the absurdity of these systems, we'll never have the energy to rebuild them. We are meeting a moment that seeks to isolate us. It tells the family in Geneva struggling with a tax bill that it is their own fault. It tells the worker that their low wages are a personal failure. But when we awaken our collective curiosity, we see the pattern. We see that we are not alone. We move from the fragility of the individual to the resilience of the collective. We are actively and deliberately centering care. We're weaving a tapestry across the state of Illinois. We are building a place where love wins and equity is the baseline. We are doing it with the same stubborn, beautiful, unreasonable wonder that has sustained UUs through history. The curiosity that led us to ask why some were saved and others weren't. And the wonder that led us to conclude that we are all, every one of us, held in a love that will not let us go. In the corporate world, they talk about disruptive innovation. In the spiritual world, we call it revelation. But in the justice world, we call it curiosity. It's the bridge between the two. It's the moment when we look at the wire at the border, the empty cupboards, and the property tax bills and say, this is not the end of the story. I wonder, what else could be true? What could I make true? We are choosing to see the path, even when it is still being paved. We are choosing to act here in Geneva, knowing that together we can move the powers in Springfield and beyond. May we be the ones who wonder. May we be the ones who organize. May we be the ones who win. Amen. Blessed be.
Visit us at uusg.org.